Jon Carter is a radio host on Radio Kampus 97.1 FM. Moreover, he's a voice actor with over 10 years of experience and an ardent English teacher. Not to forget that he was an anchor on free programs, TV programs altogether. So welcome, Jon. Welcome to The Human Story.
Well, lovely to be here, Machi. Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Don't you feel like going back to work with this mic in front of you?
I do a little bit, yeah. But to be honest, like when I sit in, I stand at radio, but when I'm in the studio at radio, it's just become so second nature that I'm almost like in my living room speaking. I have no kind of concept, or not no concept, but not so much concept that I am like doing the radio live. So here, where I'm in front of a camera and there's some lights and it's all a bit different, I do feel it doesn't feel quite so home from home. But right. Yes, I am a little bit home from home in front of a microphone. Yeah, so it's not a problem in that sense.
There's no boundary, no nothing whatsoever.
No, I don't think so. It's odd now because actually I can't remember if I was sort of apprehensive when I started. I'm pretty sure I must have been, but really it was such a long time ago now. I actually can't remember.
You don't remember how the mic frightened you, this thing sticking in your face and...
Honestly, it was like 12 years ago or even more now. So I can't really, it's a bit like, in a sense, it's a bit like when somebody asked me something about living in England or something like that. I have to sort of think quite carefully about it. It doesn't sort of spring to mind immediately because it was really quite a long time ago now that I don't have this kind of reflex response.
All right, so you kind of need to make an extra effort to bring back those feelings.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I'm going to say I probably was apprehensive before getting behind a mic, but I don't remember that feeling. I'm just saying it because I assume that I was. It's a bit like when somebody asks you about a memory from childhood. Are you actually remembering that? Or is that something that one of your parents has just sort of said back to you and it's become your memory?
Right. It might be a post-factum imagination.
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I haven't got the best sort of long-term memory. So I think a lot of like childhood memories and things like that are just stories told back to me and then became my memory.
While we're at it, what's your first childhood memory?
I think crying when I was left on the first day of nursery.
All right.
So... I think probably, 4 or 5 years, probably 4 years old, and not wanting my mum to leave or something like that. And honestly, now I'm not sure whether that was a genuine personal memory or that's just something my mum likes to bring up every Christmas. I don't know. Oh, you're in tears. We left you and you were fine after a couple of days or something like that. I honestly, I don't know. But I feel like maybe I built up the image because obviously I remember that place from later years because the nursery was part of the primary school. And so I can imagine where that is. But so if you're asking, I guess that is earliest memory, but is it mine definitively?
Yeah, well... Mine is a little bit bizarre because I remember being very little, a toddler perhaps. I was left in a room. There was somebody feeding me beetroot pulp, puree. Oh, wow. And then the feeding was over. The person, whoever that was, possibly a woman, went to the door. She turned off the light and left the room. And I was left alone in the darkness in that chair. And this thought came to my mind, how unfair this is. Why do you leave me like that? What am I supposed to do? Just wait? I wasn't scared or anything. I was just a little bit outraged.
Yeah, now I definitely think that's like, I mean, who am I to intrude on your memory and tell you what you weren't and you were and you weren't thinking? But I have to say, that does sound like, you know, you're putting a layer of kind of more mature afterthought over that, of like the injustice of like being left in the room on my own. I mean, where's the responsibility? Where's, you know, where's the empathy with the child here? You know,
right.
So, but who can say? It's one of those very sort of, yeah, I'm sure studies have been done into it, you know, to what degree like a young child would have a sense of something, but it's so innate, it's difficult to draw conclusions.
Yeah, the boundaries are very blurry. Whenever that started, no one knows. Whenever we start building our personal history, when's the big bang of awareness, of consciousness in an individual being?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, that I guess is dependent on how you kind of define it, because I suppose, yeah, it's, I don't know, yeah, too kind of difficult to say. I mean, it's an odd one as well, because it's one of the sort of things, I suppose, that science doesn't like that much, because it's one of the few things that they're not really capable of picking apart very well. And, you know, science kind of likes to make out like it's got a real grasp on things, whereas I think consciousness is very much, you know, kind of butter in its fingers, and it's just they can't sort of nail it down, and it's just too, I don't know, intangible, abstract, and, you know, almost kind of indefinable in a way. So, yeah, so I have no idea. I assume it's a kind of slow burner. That's my perception of it, rather than a on-off switch.
Yeah, it grows. But others say that it coincides with the moment when you become aware of your fleetingness, of your mortality. Whenever the cold spike of being aware of death transfixes your heart, you know, the first baby fear of death.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because if you kind of speak to a child, they will talk about, I mean, like a really young child, they will speak of a fear of something. But I don't think that is, and for them, it's always like a fear of creatures, animals, things like that. That's what it tends to relate to. So, now, is that an actual fear of being killed by that animal? I don't see it in that small child, and I also feel like it's also difficult where to draw the line between that sort of the adult influence of saying, yeah, this is the tiger. Ooh,
right.
This thing's going to get you. Or where's the actual innate fear of something? And I think, yeah, I think there is a kind of innate fear of, you know, big bad creature. I remember actually 10, 20 years ago, there was some study into... it was in America, and it was like about the people's dreams, and specifically children's dreams. I think 4, 5, 6-year-olds, something like that. And yeah, they discovered that the most typical dream, nightmare, was being chased by a monster, a creature of some sort, and actually not a real creature, as it were, but like some kind of
fantasy monster,
yeah,
something, yeah.
And that, I think, well, the conclusion that some drew, and I tend to agree with it, would have been that, you know, imagine, you know, we were lower down the food chain, or since we first came into being, all the way up until whatever 10,000 years ago. And so we have you're not going to knock that out of us in just 10,000 years. So we have a very built-in fear, and we are, of course, the descendants of people who
were facing saber-tooth.
Yeah, and we are the descendants of those who were very acutely aware of it. The ones who weren't, they got munched by the saber-tooth. So yeah, you can sort of see that in a way that there is a kind of innate fear, like burnt into our DNA, as it were. It has to be.
Yeah, there's always this fear of something lurking in the dark behind you when you're a kid, and that's as you said, innate. As gradually the child, I guess, has the set of fears it experiences more elaborate. They become more elaborate, those fears, and I guess less fantastic and more real.
Yeah. I do think, though, it is a bit of, though, what you're talking about, that kind of evolving fears. Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's got to be most of that's got to be personal experience, and especially for us living in Europe, we're not really confronted by anything other than humans that's really going to do us any harm. Other than machines. And so again, the notion of spider, it's like, well, you haven't confronted, as a child in Europe, you won't, very unlikely to have confronted a harmful spider ever.
Venomous spider.
But again, so I think it is a reflection of the fears of the adults surrounding them. Yeah,
but then again, spiders are surrounded with positive images as well, as the protectors of the household from all sorts of swarm or whatever.
Spiders have a positive image, though?
Of course.
Amongst who?
Amongst Christians, apparently. There is this Saint Thecla, who was she was fleeing from Roman persecution, and that was in Syria, actually. She was fleeing from a Roman chase, and then she went into a cave, I believe, into a grotto, and a spider apparently came and covered the entrance with its cobweb, which misled the chase. So the Romans went on. That was apparently at the time when Rome and the Roman Empire was pagan, not Christian at that point. So a spider saved Saint Thecla. And also in Islam, you've got a very similar story with Muhammad hiding from Meccans who were after him. And a spider covered a grotto where he hid inside of it. So
with a
spider's web.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I guess I don't know anything really about kind of spider mythology. It's never sort of entered or never been a feature of anything that I've come across before. So yeah, I guess I'm undereducated in that area. So yeah, I am. And when I think about the associations, I'm more thinking about just the kind of knee-jerk reaction from just your average person, which is a bit like, a spider, it's gonna get me.
So convincing, right?
That's the kind of standard response. I mean, I'm thinking about it now, actually, and we were speaking just before about early memories, and I do remember being in a wildlife sanctuary. Is that the right term? All right, let's just say it is. And I was given a large tarantula to hold, and I think I would have, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years old. I managed to put it in my hand, and I remember my mum being like, "Whoa, yeah, good for you." held a tarantula, and you're so brave
Such
or
a
something.
brave.
Right, but for me, I remember it wasn't an issue until it was implied that I should be afraid of it.
All right, so a cultural response.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of like, I don't think there is necessarily innate fear of some of these things. And, I wasn't afraid of this spider, not out of bravery, but out of, it never sort of not really discussing spiders or something like that. Or
In a manner of speaking, a lack of consideration.
Yeah. So I think that kind of tells its own story in a way. And now when I think about it, and if someone wanted to put like a tarantula in my hand, I'm sure I'd bring me out in a sweat.
Yeah.
And I'd have to sort of, I'd probably try and save face and just be like,
Obviously,
spider. But I can imagine my palms sweating as this thing crawled all over me. Yeah,
And goosebump coming up.
exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, to my mind, most of these responses to snakes, spiders, all sorts of nasty creatures, which are not really nasty in their very nature, they are made nasty by the human approach, which is in a way based on concerns for security. But then again, we are being taught to react to certain creatures in a given way, which usually is very thoughtless. We don't really consider our reaction. We just operate. We just carry out how we were programmed. There is this story of a Buddhist monk who would, as most of the Buddhist monks do it, at a certain moment in their practice, they go out into the wilderness, be it a jungle or wherever, the mountains, and they spent a couple of years there meditating all alone. And there was this Buddhist monk deep in his meditation, but still he heard at a certain moment the not a roaring, but kind of murmuring of a tiger, silent growling of a tiger. He approached the monk and started circulating around him. Well, but apparently the monk did not move. He continued to meditate, and the tiger went away. So should he react in the way he was taught to react, with fright and attempt to flee? Perhaps he would be undone.
Yeah, I can't remember what the best response to being confronted by a tiger is. Definitely don't look them in the eye.
All right.
That's apparently you're looking for beef if you it's like you're staring them down or something like that. Tigers, should you run away? Or do you know what? I think I was watching a documentary on just this topic. Shows how little attention I was paying, because I've now forgotten it. But well, actually, I don't mind saying I've forgotten it, because it's one of those things I don't really expect to use anytime soon. I'm not going anywhere where I expect to be confronted by a tiger. But when I think that it might be something a bit more practical, I think I'm a bit more switched on to it. But I think my takeaway was definitely here's the key: was it stand still or was it run away? All I can remember is avoid the eye contact, because then you're in massive trouble. And it's the same with bears as well, actually. And I think maybe it is stay motionless.
With bears, actually, you should talk to bears. I saw a short video on how, it was a short lecture by a ranger in the US, somewhere in the northern states. He was filling us in on how to react to grizzly bears and black bears, because they differ. Apparently, the black bears, although they are smaller, they are more dangerous because they are more aggressive. Grizzly
Right.
bears usually do not attack people unless they are either very hungry or I don't know, smell of meat is out in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think bears don't eat people though. So even if they were hungry, would they? I don't think that's.
I think grizzly bear can learn to eat human flesh.
Oh, all right.
And also, so about talking with bears, when there is a bear coming up your way, you should talk to the bear as in, easy bear, we are not here to cross you, go along, move on, and just step away from the path and just let him pass, and that's it.
I have been in a sort of, I think in the States where there was some kind of national park where there was a lot of guidelines as to what to do in the national park with protecting yourself from bears, and most of it was kind of pertained to locking up your food and cosmetics, etc., and not having that out in the open, having it kind of locked away and not having it next to you as well. So don't have your food in your tent or cosmetics there. Yeah, even actually, I'll tell you what they did have. They had these kind of big metal boxes, and that's where you keep all food, anything that kind of is somehow an attractive smell for a bear. That's where you lock it all up. And I remember they have these kind of scare photos of literally people who left a bit of food in a car, and you just see this car just battered, absolutely battered. A bear just, I assume they had honey in the car, right? But whatever. It was quite an awesome sight seeing how this bear had just absolutely crushed a car in an attempt to get some food. So.
Well, I think beer would also convince a bear to turn the car inside out.
Yeah, bears like a drink, do they?
Yeah, they do. Like with this Wojtek bear. Yeah, I'm sure you know of Wojtek the bear.
Okay, wartime.
Yeah, wartime bear, the one who followed Polish soldiers to Italy, and on the way when they were still in the Middle East, they would give him beer and Aperol that he would drink with them, and also smoke. He would also
tell some great stories in the pub.
Sure, and lift ladies' underwear as well.
He sounds like one of the boys, yeah.
Definitely. And he ended up in the
Rehab?
Edinburgh Zoo.
Edinburgh Zoo. Okay. Good for him. Well, I'm glad he didn't end up in Warsaw Zoo in the bear enclosure, because that place, nightmare.
You know what? We actually had the director of the zoo on our show. He was our first.
I don't have anything per se against your zoo, but you know what it is. You know when you're going down Solidarności, is it? And when the trams are there and it's imagine that every day. And there's about once every kind of couple of years there is somebody who's had a bit of, and they jump over the sort of like half-meter high barrier and into the enclosure.
You're saying they are asking for trouble. That's it.
I am. I mean, I'm not saying like build a higher wall and that's going to be a solution.
Build a wall.
Just like stick them at the other end of the zoo or something. I just don't think they're enjoying themselves there.
Well, maybe they are there just, to remind people of natural selection.
Yes. I don't know. Yeah. Now you've got me like holding my tongue a little bit, so I'm like, don't want to piss off the manager of the zoo. Yeah. But
a great guy, by the way. Very.
Not knocking him. Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I do. Every time I sort of pass down that street, I am just like, that's got to be rough along there. Hearing because it gets to me. I sometimes think, geez, when you're somewhere in Warsaw and you're, choosing a flat or whatever, and there'll be somewhere not living there where there's busy street and all the trams going past or something, and even if you're however many floors up and you can't hear it so clearly or something like that, it's like, yeah, well, the bear hasn't even got a sort of a window to sort of block out that incessant sound. It's night and day. Well, not night. They do stop running about 11:30, but you get my point.
Well, yeah, perhaps we should consider their accommodation and give them the choice to change it, because they weren't able to choose their accommodation, were they, those bears?
I guess not, no. Yeah, I don't know what to. I don't have. It sounds like I have strong opinions on zoos, but I genuinely don't. And I'm I've visited Warsaw Zoo plenty of times, and I'm not a sort of ardently against zoos or something like that. But I'm definitely not sort of pro zoo or something. I don't think it's a especially like healthy feature of society. And I do think that maybe in sort of centuries to come, there might be a sort of look back on this and just like, yeah, maybe that
wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, or just like every couple of centuries past, we kind of look back on it. Like, damn, did people really do that? Was that a thing? And there's multiple things I've sort of had thoughts about. Where you think, no, I don't just mean zoos or animals, anything. Just broadly speaking, I wonder how the future will judge us in that respect.
Yeah, but I remember those stories about the Wrocław Zoo.
What were the stories?
Well, the stories were that very positive ones. They are very successful at bringing back, well, maybe not bringing back, but preserving endangered species. And they've got quite a good, lucky streak on reproducing those species.
Yeah, and exactly in this sort of sense, like in a world where sometimes we're kind of driving some creatures to extinction, like we kind of obliged to counteract that as best we can. So it definitely performs a positive role in some respects, definitely.
Also, the guy Kruszewicz is the director of the Warsaw Zoo.
Right.
He wrote a very interesting book on how humans are hypocrites towards animals.
Yeah.
Because he revisits those convictions or pre-convictions that farming is the better, the more humane way, and it allows for animals to be saved. Cows are not slaughtered, whatever, and basically you just eat plants. So vegetarianism as this way to save animals, he criticizes that approach, because whenever you want to prepare a plot of land that would be transformed into a field for, I don't know, crops or whatever, you need to eradicate the entire natural environment of that place, whether it's just a meadow, when you've got machines plowing through the land, through the soil, they just plow through everything. If there are rabbits, the rabbits are being lacerated. If there are whatever insects, which are crucial to the richness of soil, they're being decimated. Everything is just eradicated. And then plants, crops, whatever are being sown and grown. But at what expense that comes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about it really to sort of weigh it up and say what's the sort of the balance of the pros and cons of it. If I was being a bit, I don't know, maybe not glib, but a bit sort of shrugging it off a little bit, I suppose I'd say something a bit heartless, like you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. But in actual facts, given where we are today, we can't do without sort of modern agriculture, and for better or worse, it has just become a necessity. And with everything that we do and create, it has like negative side effects, and you've got to sort of weigh those up with what the benefits are. And we were, it's true, like humans do kind of obsess over maybe seemingly insignificant aspects of animal safety, well-being, etc. And we have a kind of blind spot to an enormous amount of things which are destroying them and making it pretty grim for them. So but like I said, I commenting on like the pros and cons of farming. I'd have to look into it myself to make a judgment call. So I'm going to sit on the fence with the benefits or not of agriculture.
Right. Do you talk about such topics as well as a radio host? And in the first place, how did you become a radio host in Poland? That's an interesting topic.
Years ago, I moved to Poland because of a friend at the time who was living in Poland, English friend, and he was listening to Kampus. That was his radio station. So he'd been living here a couple of years before I arrived. And I guess a couple of months after I'd arrived, he started talking to me about, like I should go along to Kampus and tell them that I want a show. And I said, well, go for it, do it. So he spoke to somebody there and then came home and was like, we've got a show. And that was it. So from then the boss, who's still actually the same boss today for me, said, all right, we'll give you an hour, and then we'll see how it goes.
Did he tell you what he wanted you to talk about, or what that was entirely up to you?
No, it was left up to us. I mean, we kind of sold it on the notion that we were bringing an educational aspect to the station. Of course, it's an academic station. So there was the kind of notion that yes, it's we're bringing the English language to the academia, to the exactly. And I guess the actual themes themselves were less important. I think we tried very much to kind of incorporate things that were happening in Warsaw and around us, particularly things to do with like music and cultural events, anything like that.
Did you was your take on that from an expat's angle?
You mean like what was the expat scene, or
kind of? Was that your take on this on the show, or were you just?
No, I think we wanted to sort of, or at least not. I don't think we've ever even had this discussion, but I think it was kind of agreed on, implicitly that. We weren't going to have a kind of expats angle on it of, we
can find this here and there, go speak with this guy.
No, nothing like that. It was more, my friend and I at the time, we were interested in music. I liked DJing. He was really keen on music, and we liked going to concerts, to festivals, anything that we could sort of get a free ticket for.
So that's the student mentality. Well, you fit in great.
Yeah, that was it. I was classic. It was hi there. So we've been talking about your festival on our radio show, and there's been a great response. We'd like to. I shouldn't say this. I'm giving away the secrets. That isn't what happened. It was not like that. So yeah, I mean, basically, no. This was the thing. It was just incorporating our sort of interests and with what was happening in Warsaw. Now that's kind of evolved over time, where I maybe like less socially active, etc., and it's just become more about sort of talking points that I feel are of interest and just very random things. It still centers a lot around music, and I like talking about music, but less about the sort of live things and more about, stories related to music and, so-and-so's released this, or do you remember that kind of.
Are you more into Dubliners or Iron Maiden?
Oh, I neither, to be honest. No, I don't play any kind of metal on the show. And who are Dubliners?
The Dubliners, they are an Irish band, kind of an ensemble of bards, just strumming guitars, and that's it.
All right. Yeah, to be honest, I don't.
They've got this song, Fields of Athenry. Long ride the fields of Athenry.
All right. Yeah, I don't know it. I will check it. It's become like a bit of a cliche to say that, what music you into? Oh, I'm into everything, man. That's not true. I'm not into everything. But when it comes to like what's played on the radio, it is a pretty broad selection, and that's part of deliberately so, just to make it broad and not to sort of center on particular genres. So yeah, it's like guitar based music, it's electronic music, it's sometimes a bit more experimental, sometimes it's like old funk and disco, and really like loads of different things. And to be honest, it really depends what I have stumbled across during the week.
All right, you just want to share. This is what I heard. And
simple as that, yeah. And it's just like sharing what I've come across, and I still enjoy doing that to this day, and still, digging up things which, surprise me.
Have you ever listened to Mongolian heavy metal?
I haven't. No.
Oh, you've got to check out the Who, but not written in the English way. It's not WHO, it's the HU.
Okay.
They are mad, they are nuts. It's just they use traditional instruments and electric guitars. They also sing in Mongolian, and they have got the what's it called, the throat singing, I guess, which is and it's absolutely, it's kicking. They also wrote a song for one of the latest Star Wars video games. It's called Star Wars The Fallen Order, I believe. Yeah, they came up with their own language, as you usually do when you make up extraterrestrial languages or fantasy languages.
So the band came up with their own language?
Yeah, just for this one song. I think they based it heavily on Mongolian. It sounds very Mongolian, but it's cool.
I bet they kind of So here's the thing, because at least I would assume there's not a great deal of so much Western culture influenced in Mongolia. So if they said they were making up a language, there's not going to be too many Mongolians who are like, hold on, they haven't made up anything. This is just Mongolian with a bit of funny, sound effects thrown in. And nobody would know the difference, because the vast majority of people consuming a Star Wars or whatever be like, ooh, that's so odd, and they've come up with their own thing. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, the Who, if I'm trash talking you there, and you genuinely have come up with your own language. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that those kind of you hear about twins doing, isn't it? They sort of create their own language and
and their way of communication. Yeah, and they basically fill each other's sentences. They create one sentence with two voices. So yeah, you know what the other is gonna say.
Yeah. So I mean, I suppose maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe when you initially said it, my initial thought was, "Whoa, they created their own language, man." But then, sort of, now I'm reflecting on it, and it's like, well, no, actually, that's not. It's not. It'd be difficult to write and then learn and then genuinely embrace a whole new language, but literally just to adapt it for a song.
No, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. I would say that they came up with their own sounds and perhaps ascribed meaning to those sounds. That might be more adequate. Because Tolkien, he came up with his own languages.
Yeah, right. Well,
based on Old Norse and whatever.
Were the police doing that with a do do do, a da da da, da 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 da?
Yeah, well,
just as a kind of like a baby talk song. Yeah, which perhaps there was a hidden second language in there that we are unfamiliar with.
A hidden message.
It seems unlikely.
For the exclusive 300 of the wealthiest on planet Earth.
Maybe, although I don't sort of put Sting down as that sort of type, to be honest.
I don't think so. How about you two?
That's a different kettle of fish. Yeah. I'm not. I remember, like, when I was a teenager, or in fact, even younger, sort of, I don't know, 11, 12, 13, that kind of age. My best friend at the time was a big fan of U2, like huge, really into them. And it didn't do anything for me at the time, but to be honest, I wasn't that enthusiastic about music at that age. I just had a couple of things which I was interested in. I suppose U2 were a little bit, at that period as well, they were very much about the music, whereas today you're, at least as a Brit or maybe as an Irishman, I think the kind of initial reaction to hearing the words U2 would just be yeah, it's like, because it's just sort of become so politicized. I don't even just mean the music, but just them external from their music that it's difficult to sort of speak about that. And I'm very much a sort of person, I like to separate the music from the artist's beliefs.
Sometimes,
at least I try to, but
sometimes you absolutely need to do that.
Absolutely, but in the case of U2, it becomes particularly tricky.
Yeah, some time ago Bono said that basically Europe should be left for dead, and we basically should redirect all of our capital to Africa. I believe that's something that he said.
Yeah, I can imagine him saying something like that. I'm assuming, though, he wasn't thinking of himself when he said that, and that he would just alone live in Dublin and just sort of, just be him and a couple of his family and friends, whilst everybody was, drinking piss water in Africa and starving, basically.
Bono, I'm not a big fan of U2, but I'm more of a fan of Jon Carter.
Thanks.
And I'm just curious, have you ever had any particularly bizarre experience while being the radio host of Kampus? Have you ever had any strange guest, an unwieldy show?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. Yeah, this is the type of thing which I suspect probably I'll go home to bed at night and I'll be thinking, oh, yeah, there was this one time. Honestly, nothing springs to mind, like with something particularly strange happening on the show or something like that. No, I can't think of any particularly memorable story. It's mostly centered around things outside of the studio. They are the memorable things, and then I tell the stories on the radio. Those tend to be the things that happen. When you said that, though, the first thing I thought of was a guy that I was kind of friends with at the time. Obviously won't say his name, but he used to. He had a long-term relationship with somebody, and he hosted the radio show with them, and then they kind of they split. And but he continued to have the show with them, and I wasn't listening, but I remember hearing the story from many people that they had this big Barney live on air. I'll say no more about it. But I thought, wow, that is. I mean, in a way, it kind of sounds like it. That you're kind of headed down that direction if if you split and then you carried on. Doing your show. It's sort of you can imagine sort of it was probably all going all right at first, but then somebody kind of brought up something which triggered off some sort of sensitive
Ragnarok.
point. Yeah, right.
Well, it happens when you want to change somebody using a mic and a cable.
Right, yeah, indeed.
How about TV programs? Because you also appeared in front of cameras.
I did.
When and where was it, and how was it?
It was 4 or 5 years ago now at Republica, and so we were the first English-speaking Polish news program, and so I presented the news there, I mean, it was good times, like when we kind of started off, and it was kind of new and exciting, and really enjoyed it. A lot of fun.
Were you an anchor on a news program, or was it another type of a show?
It was a news program, so basically it was me and 2 other people, and I think I did like 3 nights a week, and I'd just sort of go along to the studio, and we'd take a bunch of stories, and I would work together with the writers, and then we'd talk about the story, how it looks, and check everything was okay, and then I'd go down, and then someone would paint my face, and then I'd go and sit in a green room, and it would sort of look like magic, and off I'd go and present the news, basically.
What's the most demanding part of the job? Something that keeps you awake at night.
Honestly, it really wasn't that demanding in a sense. Obviously at first you feel nervous, and you're worried about how you're sort of coming across, and then you'd watch yourself back and you'd be like, ooh, but again, it sort of just became like radio, and I just did it like clockwork, and I sort of just rattle it off in the end. But what was the hardest part about it? Sometimes there was a little bit of let's say like a tight turnover with what you're trying to do is you're trying to fit in. Like you have slots, so they're trying to record lots of different shows, and this show is going to be recorded at this time, this show at another time, and sometimes if things aren't ready, you can miss your slot or something like that, and whatever. So it has to be all done very quickly, and therefore maybe I wouldn't get a chance to really properly read what I was going to read until I was put in the studio, and then we have a 10-minute slot, read it, go. And then you're just on the prompter. And obviously at first that gets quite difficult, but again I sort of adjusted to that fairly quickly, because I sort of do quite a lot of voiceover work, and that again with voiceovers, they very, very rarely send you a text beforehand. They literally just, you arrive in a studio and someone goes, here you go in there then. And you're just sort of expected to, off you go and sort of recite it as if, very, very naturally, whereas actually you haven't really been given more than a couple of minutes to read the whole thing through. I kind of really just got used to that and kind of adjusted to it. And the kind of trick to it I found was just you go into these sort of slightly over elaborate intonations. And that kind of gives you this kind of natural bit more extra time of doing to read it, so you're not going to rush through it.
So you like prolong the vowels?
Yeah, a bit. I always thought that, you know, maybe I overdo it. We're trying to avoid like a kind of monotone voice, but part of it, yeah, was a trick in order to buy myself a bit more time and you know, kind of slow it down a little bit without it sounding like it's being read too slowly, if you know what I mean.
Did you adjust your accent, or not at all? You just used your natural accent. What's your natural accent? What kind of accent do you have?
Well, I suppose it was a bit more Londonish, South Londonish before, and now it's just kind of flattened out into, yeah, now it's just flattened out into something a bit more nondescript, I suppose. But yeah, you know, I've learnt over time, with particularly depending on what you're reading, to adapt like my tone, my accent to what I'm reading. So obviously I'm not reading it in my natural voice when I'm reading the news. I'm trying to make sure that my pronunciation is, you know, as clear and defined as possible. So if I sort of go off on one, like I would on the radio, just ranting, or maybe just here, then I you know, you end up dropping vowels and you know, mispronouncing things a little bit, just because you're just in the flow of things. Whereas actually, yeah, you become a lot more conscious of that because you want it to come across as, right, you know, not
as pure and clear.
Yeah, exactly. So,
do you, when you have a quotation, do you adjust your voice to a person who said that? For example, if that's an elderly person, do you make yourself sound more elderly, or not at all? You just read it as you are?
Do you know what? I don't have that. So when you're reading the news, you don't read a quote by somebody. Or if you do, it's not sort of done in that way. I think if I did, I'd end up over exaggerating, and I'd go down a bad route of trying to do an impression of something or someone. You know, I enjoy putting on an impression of something or someone. So it's a bit of a it will be something I want to avoid in a kind of formal setting, I think. So no, I wouldn't. But yeah, I was reading something the other day, actually, and it was a sort of quote by someone. And no, I did it purely in my own voice. And it was supposed to be for like a professor. And he was talking about something, I can't remember, like gene therapy or something like that. And
CRISPR.
Yeah, right. And yeah, it did cross my mind for a second. Shall I put on a bit of some kind of different voice? I thought, no. You just rattle it off, you know, read it in your own voice, and, you know.
By the way, because in the English language, there is a way of pronouncing the final Y, which is a little bit odd. Like you don't say humanity, you say humanité. I heard it a couple of times.
Yeah, is that a thing?
Yeah, I heard it.
Well, I think it might depend maybe on where you're from or who you are as to, you know, there are these sorts of things are often, you know, they're kind of giraffe. It's like where you're from in the country more than something which might be specifically British, I think. Not in all cases, but yeah, humanity.
Yeah. Like with any final Y, humanity, solidarity.
Oh, no, I'm completely oblivious to.
Yeah, I've heard it a couple of times, but it's not as popular, surely.
Yeah.
Well, and how much of acting is there in voice acting that you do?
For me, not a great deal, because actually, funny, I've been trying to do more things related in connection with kind of acting in relation to sort of computer games, etc. But I've kind of come to the realization that, you know, I am not an actor, and I have no experience of acting, and that when I'm trying to do something like that and I'm competing with, even an amateur actor, that I'm really out of my depth. You know, and when someone asks me, like, yeah, do this voice in a angry way, or seductive way, or passionate way, I realized that actually I've just spent, more than a decade in a very, almost not unemotional, but just something which is very easy for me to adapt. All the kind of work that I've done, anything to do with voices, like it's the radio, it's me doing my normal voice. If it's reading a documentary, it's like if it's an advert, it's like
orchestra, man.
Right, but there's no, you're just sort of jumping around with intonation. It's not genuinely like, right, read this. And I was asked a couple of weeks ago, like, read this, and you're about to start a fight with a guy, a bunch of people in a brawl, in a pub, and there's about to be a brawl. You are furious. And I tried to read it, and the guy,
unstoppable.
Yeah, and the guy was just like, okay, but you're really angry. Okay, I'm angry, And it was the same. Geez, now it's coming back to us. Well, I had to pretend to be a hooker in a bar as well. Yeah, it was. It was kind of, yeah. I was going to say it was cringe. There was only about 4 or 5 other people around, so they were in the other room, so I couldn't see them. So yes, I could just be a hooker for that 1 minute, and I could just whisper in someone's ear, and and it was, and then the guy just said to me, but you're really trying to seduce them. Okay. This is gonna bite me on the arse sometime later.
You should have told him to show you the way.
Right? Yeah, that's it. So
a little bit of inspiration.
I had to read like 8 different sort of various emotions, scenes from different places, and the whole sort of scale of human emotions, and it really brought it home to me that actually, whoa, okay, I've never really done this. Probably since I was about like 13, 14, when I this is where I think I got like the thing with using my voice, and while I came comfortable with my own voice was with my best friend at the time. We used to take my mum's dictaphone, and so first of all, we'd write a script of like an audio drama, shall we say, and it was essentially like a rip-off of the A-Team, but it was called The Squad.
The Squad. And what's the A-Team?
The A-Team?
The A-Team, all right.
Yeah, B.A. Baracus.
All right.
Yeah, it was very big in England in the 80s, and obviously in the States. Yeah, it was just a bunch of renegades who went around solving crime in a van, and there was 4 kind of characters. There was the head, Hannibal, chuffing away on a cigar, Face, who was good with the ladies, the Joker, forgotten his name now, and then B.A. Baracus, the big lad with the chains. I'm not such a big fan of like speaking about myself as such, because what it is, because you kind of get into this thing like there's so many stories where it's like, oh, that might offend him, that is about that. And so when it gets kind of down to my own like story unless it's, you know,
You are a contentious person.
or well, just like think about like who I've worked for, and then you know, and honestly, like all the funny stories and all the sort of the real interesting meat of things is really like is going to negatively impact somebody or offend someone.
You see, story is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool to share, but then again, the things you share, oh man, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, do you know, actually, I'll tell you what, on my way here, I was actually thinking about, I was just sort of daydreaming, looking out the window, and I was thinking, I wonder if Matthew will ask me if I do a podcast or have done a podcast or something like that. And I was playing out the conversation in my mind.
So, any podcast out there? Have you ever done any?
I have never. No, I don't think I have. And although there was a period where I recorded, or rather ripped, the radio show and made a podcast out of it, so made it available for public streaming, download, etc. But after a while, I changed my mind, and I liked the idea that, or I rather became more comfortable with the idea that there wasn't public record of what I had said on the radio. And it's not that I'm saying anything so kind of outrageous or controversial, not at all, but there are still certain things which, you know, I would like to sort of dip into and just sort of put it out there, and rather not have somehow that laid at my door somehow later. I mean, it's very unlikely, but there you go. You never know. And you know, I would sleep more easy with the knowledge that some things which I put out there are you know, were just put into people's minds, and you know, and then it left again. And there is also a kind of beauty to it as well. There it is. You can only capture it during that time. It's there, it's a fleeting moment, and it's gone. And if you didn't catch it, there it
Bad
is.
luck for you, right?
Yeah, and you know, I've had many people say, "Oh, make it available for download. I can't always listen then." And yeah, for those, I would like them to give them the chance to do that. But then at the same time, there is something which is. I like the idea of it disappearing into the ether and it being that kind of one-off in a way. And you know, we very much live in a time where everything is like documented and recorded, and both in audio, visual, and online sense. So yeah, it's nice to have something in a kind of traditional way, which is here and gone.
Yeah, right. Evanescent. Yeah. So, what do you think about the fact that we are having every single chapter of our life more or less documented, and it's out there, contributing to this humongous database of human existence? Yeah, it's crazy in a way, and there's too much of it. In all honesty, it's overwhelming just thinking about the amount of stuff which is just out there, information and different avenues to go down. And you know, some people are obviously of the opinion that, you know, you can't have too much information or possibilities for information. I kind of disagree, and I think that there is a good case to be made, like, for kind of restricting it slightly. I think that the happy medium was the earlier days of the internet, you know, because of course if you kind of rewind back to the 80s, 90s, etc., we had a very sort of
limited kind of amount of information. It was the where you got that what that information was, where you got it. It was literally it was the mainstream media, or it was from books or films, and that's what there was. And now, yeah, it's just kind of exploded into, you know, just infinite kind of avenues and possibilities. And I kind of like the sense that it's slightly more refined. I don't want it to be simply refined to what it was previously, but I think the kind of what's sometimes referred to as the kind of wild, wild west days of the early internet, were, you know, you type something in and you'd literally get back what you had typed in. There was no filter to what you had searched for. You know, it wasn't out to the top bidder of you know, what you'd search for. Whereas now the kind of the filter, the algorithm, etc., has refined it so much down to this point of. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who was telling me they used to work for a firm which decided that sold. What's the right terminology? Maybe sold the ability, the possibility to get on the first page of a Google search, for example. You know, because obviously if you can just have your website, but we're not like in, you know, 2005 where if you've got a specific name you'll just be found. No, you won't even appear. It's restricted down to whatever 20 pages or something, and you won't even appear on those 20 pages unless you have paid for it. I mean, maybe you would. I don't know exactly how it works, but fundamentally you've got to be found, because most people won't even look beyond the first page when they do a search. Then you need to pay to get onto that first page,
or you need to cater to people's preferences and resign from having your original viewpoint expressed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we do have. I kind of have what almost seems like a bit of a contradiction in terms of my viewpoint on this, because on the one hand I'm like rallying against the notion of too much expansion of possibilities of consuming information, and then on the other hand I'm also saying that, you know, fundamentally the search engines and the things that we use today, for the most part, the average person uses search engines, i.e. Google, to acquire their information, their news, etc. And this is extremely limiting in a way.
Absolutely.
So in another way, we have kind of gone back to that era of refining the information spectrum, but it's not, you know, the reality of today is not the reality of the 80s and the 90s, where let's just say the freedom of expression and the broadness of views was fundamentally much wider, and, you know, people tended to say what they said and mean what they said. Whereas today, yeah, it's endless filters and you know, designed to ultimately meet a kind of narrative and an agenda. So, yeah.
So even if you have your own say about things, you can't get through those. Let's say they are top-down imposed narratives. They are the most catchy, the most apparent.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously there are platforms which allow for less mainstream narratives and viewpoints, etc. But you have to kind of be in the know, as it were, to find those. And and another part of me maybe thinks that this is not maybe so important on the one hand, because in a way, there is only a certain degree or a certain percentage of inquiring minds amongst the population, and that actually it's always been the case that most people will be pretty happy with whatever the zeitgeist of the time is, and here it is. So all right, whatever, there it is. So that's I'll go along with that. Even if that's not their conscious thought process, that is in fact what's going on. And there's only 10-15% who are, maybe even less, who are fundamentally, this is, there must be more to it than this. I need to find out more. I need to inquire. I need to get to the bottom of this mystery or whatever it might be, So,
the inquisitive minds of the few.
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to make it sound like, I'm amongst those chosen few, or whatever. But
saw the light.
Whatever. Yeah, actually, whatever. I don't mind what people think.
We are in the light.
Yeah, but we are now. It's fine. Yeah, whatever. I do think I am in a relatively small minority of people who try to do a bit of investigation into things a little different from...
not take it for the face value.
Yeah, and scratch beneath the surface and keep scratching and, confront very uncomfortable points of view and things which, actually would eventually get me in a lot of trouble if I'd air them. And, if I had a big platform to put that out, then I'm sure, I'd meet problems.
Yeah, and these ruminations of ours, those journeys into the modern day society structures and what's seen, what's unseen, what is found within the limits of our consciousness is very intriguing. So, but how about physical travels? Have you done in your life any blood freezing adventures?
Blood freezing adventures?
Yeah. Hanging from the cliff,
I'm going to the Amazon jungle next week.
You are?
That will be maybe not blood freezing, but maybe mosquito blood extracting. So I am kind of seeking something like that, and basically, it was a kind of dream of mine since being pretty young to go to the Amazon, basically.
For how long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And I for one reason or another, I never did it. Maybe I was a bit put off by not knowing any Spanish, and not being confident enough to go out there by myself and go head first into the jungle. But now I know someone there, and it kind of fills me with a little bit more confidence to take that plunge, let's say. So
it's good to travel with somebody or have someone to fill you into the new reality whenever you go outside of your country or outside of your continent. It's like an entirely different planet.
It is.
You're like so amazed with the forms, the colors, the scents. It's amazing.
Yeah, very much. And this is, I suppose, like, definitely for the past however many years it is now, like, I've just had a bit of hunger for that in the back of my mind. I haven't
wanderlust.
Yeah, exactly. That hasn't been very fulfilled in quite some time. So I really am seeking that kind of adventure and stepping into the unknown, and a little bit of stepping out of the comfort zone and resetting in that way, and something to really spark the imagination a little bit, and get away from, fundamentally I'm somebody who was brought up in a big city and has always lived in a big city, and but since moving to Poland, it's awoken something in me which has like a thirst for wildlife and nature.
Moving to Poland, it woke up the desire, the drive for wildlife exploration.
Moving to Warsaw, right?
Warsaw, right?
Yeah, love that concrete. But no, you know what it is? The reason why I say that is actually because, all right, put it like this. If you live I was brought up in London, and when you're in London and you've got, let's say you've got a free weekend, nothing particular planned, it's not likely that you would go out of London, and if you did, it very unlikely would be to the countryside.
Is it because of the urban sprawl being too expansive?
Possibly. And look, maybe this has changed, but this was the case when I was a child. People didn't think beyond their space. We very rarely went to the countryside. It was only when I went out, it was like to another city, maybe to visit relations or something like that. And so you didn't cross your mind to go to the countryside. What's there? No, it wasn't. I was against it. It never crossed my mind to explore it, to think about it. And then when you come to Poland, fundamentally, when you're in Warsaw, this is a lot of the people living in Warsaw are people who are not originally from Warsaw, and
commuters.
Not only, but just people who are like first generation Warszawians, right? And so given the opportunity, they will head straight back to the village and immediately feel right back at home. And so kind of seeing that, and especially like in the early years in Warsaw, I was always kind of like curious about what the hell's going on. I walk down like Marszałkowska on a Saturday or something, and I'd be like, there's nobody here. This is like one of the biggest like shopping streets in the capital city. Nobody's around.
People just backed out.
Yeah, and like almost half the had just trotted off back to wherever they'd originally come from. And maybe I'm talking more about spring and summertime, but so this kind of very quickly then I was getting invites from people to go to wherever, and this, I wasn't very comfortable with it at first, just because I was very inexperienced with those sort of settings. But the more I did it, the more I'd sort of reflect on it. Not my time at first being there, but reflecting on it. I'm like, whoa, actually, I felt so good and so relaxed, and now I feel so good and relaxed, and now I feel like reset and like exaggerating, born again, whatever the less exaggerated terminology for born again is, but refreshed maybe. Right. So and the more I did it, the more I got into it, and eventually I found my own sort of pathway with it, and now I really embrace it, and now I'm at the point where I'm going to the jungle.
Going to another level, bringing it to another level. Well, from my point of view, when I came back to Warsaw after spending a good 11 months in Morocco, it's only then when it hit me that this city has a particular spirit about it. It has a very specific soul. It's, on one hand, it's vampiric. There's something dark and something that drains you in a way. But on the other hand, it's still it electrifies you. It's electric. Mostly because I spend a lot of time on developing my photography skills. I also noticed that Warsaw has some sweet spots for photography. You really can fall in love with this city as a photographer. But as an Englishman, not in New York, in Warsaw, what's your experience? What was your initial experience upon coming here?
It's a good question. I'm trying to sort of
again reconstruct those experiences, right?
yeah. Are these my real memories? No, they are.
Or implanted.
Yeah, no. So originally I lived in Ursynów, like about 13 years ago.
The best neighborhood.
Is it?
Well, it's green. I liked it. That's where I was born.
It's not. I haven't got anything, really against Ursynów, but that was where I was. My friend chose that place, and I lived with my mate, and that was it. So, what was my impression? Do you know? It's difficult to say. I think my impressions started building up later, and real reflection started building up later. I do get asked it quite often, and what I've realised is actually I was in a kind of state of relief from leaving England, actually, because I had such a difficult time with work. Just before leaving, I really hated my job, and it was like getting me down. So that initial stage, even though I came in the middle of like a really deep, cold winter in Ursynów, it didn't matter. It was new. It was
and
so
you start.
Different. Yeah, it was a new start, and everything was new. And even like buying frozen pierogi from Aldi or wherever the hell it was, from the local place, and thinking that was, oh my God, this is Polish food. This is going to be shit, isn't it? Like, oh, damn, like, this is what they do. They buy frozen pierogi and then they boil it up and then they just eat it with ketchup.
Ingest them.
This is what I did because this is what my English friend showed me.
That's how you live in Poland.
Right. And I just thought, oh, God, oh, well, whatever, I'll adapt. And, it wasn't until later that I'd sort of saw beyond frozen pierogi. And, I remember, I used to live actually right next to Kabaty Forest. And for the first 6 months, I had no idea I was next to a forest. Every single day, I walked left out of my block of flats and I walked down to the metro.
Kabaty metro?
Imielin,
okay.
And I'd do this kind of 10-15 minute walk and... that was it. It would be this, and even
back
when
to your haven.
Yeah, and even when I was like just wanted to go for a walk, it looked to me, if I walked right, it looked like just the end of a kind
civilization.
Of like a cul-de-sac or something. So I didn't think anything was there. And one day I remember we saw this guy, and he was like a friend of a friend, and he was like, "So, do you ever go to Kabaty Forest?" I was like, I've never heard of it. He's like, but you live 5 minutes from it. I was like, no. He said, well, yeah, of course you do. And I was like, really? And I remember, you have to remember, this isn't a day, like people, even just 13 years ago, you weren't sort of so internet savvy and regularly using it. I wasn't online all the time. I wasn't, when I wanted a question answered, my first thought wasn't like search that or think about, open up the map or whatever. So yeah, I just was less aware of my environment. I was more reliant on connections, who I met, whatever. So yeah, I walked out the flat one day and went the other way. I came back and said to my mate, oh my God, we live next to a massive forest. This is cool. Like, we should go here more often.
And you ventured into the woods?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I did that was quite a strong memory of kind of discovering that. And then, to be honest, I've lived in a lot of different places in Warsaw, all around the city. And
how about the socialist architecture? I'm speaking more about the blocks of flats. They usually, back then, perhaps a little bit grayer landscape, cityscape. Now it gets a new lick of paint.
Yeah. Do you know what? Again, in those early days, I just felt it was just new. It was just different, and my impression really, I didn't reflect on, oh my God, it's just a huge concrete jungle or something like that. It was more. Yeah, I didn't have. It wasn't sort of a positive or negative thing, and then over time, I sort of, then I started to look at it differently. And in fact, I was going through Bomovo the other day, and I was thinking, I am never living here. I do not like Bomovo. Vola, that district, sorry if you live there, but you know, it's...
But isn't Vola a downer? It is a little bit dreary.
It is
especially
massively.
if you know about history, you know.
Okay, this also.
But that as well. I'm not talking about the new Vola with all the skyscrapers and stuff. That's very shiny and old.
Well, okay, but look, there's two Volas. There is like kind of Śródmieście, central, nearer the centre Vola, and like you said, which is a bit more shiny. And then there is Vola, Bomovo, Vola, that type of area, which is just this kind of endless kind of 15 levels, 15-story buildings, which are just, it's just an endless landscape of blocks, block, and they're endlessly popping up, and it's just, I just find it very, very grim there, and it has no personality at all. And there are many other parts of Warsaw which have some kind of personality, even if it's like something which is not like necessarily like a positive association. It has personality to it, and I'd much rather live there than something just a bit sort of
blank.
Yeah, very much. And that's how I perceive those areas. So, kind of in answer to your question, I don't, it's taken a little bit of time for me to sort of recognize those more kind of concrete jungle type areas and, really feel dragged down by them. I look for something a bit different.
How about Poles? As a British person arriving to Poland and interacting with Polish people, was there anything that struck you as I don't know, maybe repulsive, maybe bizarre, maybe surprising?
Again, like I'm trying to recall this. Like this is what happens when you're sort of, you live somewhere for a long time, because now I don't. It is like I am the fish in water, and this is my reality. Polish people are my everyday reality. So I'm trying to remember like what my like original reaction or feelings were. I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's difficult to say. One on the one hand, I'd be referring to Warszawians who are not like your typical Poles or something. And in all honesty, generally people have been like very good to me, very friendly, and wanting to know about me and what I'm doing here and why. And most Poles have made me feel pretty comfortable with being in Poland, and I'm grateful for that. So I would say on the whole, I have a pretty positive perspective of like how I'm made to feel, like the less kind of personal encounters are of course like less positive, the kind of going into the shops or the kind of governmental institutions, etc. They are a bit more challenging,
I guess that's always the case, regardless of the place you end up at.
No, I'm not so sure about that. Like, I would say, like, in a lot of places, they, albeit maybe fake politeness or fake smiley face or whatever, there is, if you're in Britain, people put on a face in these governmental institutions, or they put on a face. When I say governmental institution, I'm talking like the urgent, the post office, whatever, or in the local shop. They will speak to you quite politely, and there's a lot of please and thank you, and it feels pretty genuine, even if it's not. And it's but when you're in Poland, it's a lot more. There's a kind of communist hangover of like, what fucking doing in my shop? I'm gonna get out of here, buy some shit, get out, go on. What you gonna buy? Okay, I'm gonna buy a packet of chewing gum with a 100 zloty note. Face of thunder. You know that face. That's like, do you know what I've got in my till? I have got about 17 zloty, and you, like in change, like I've got 50 and 100 notes, and you have come in here and you've got a 100 note, and you just think you can pay for that like that. And it's funny because for years, every time I went back to England, I would then sort of, for example, like I pull out a £20 note and pay for a packet of chewing gum or something, and I'd apologise. I'd say, I'm really sorry, and the guy would be like, what? Just there you go. And you'd be like, oh yeah, you don't apologise for just having a note. It's his responsibility to have a till full of change, not my responsibility to have the right change.
Sure, but if there was a problem back in the day, now it's growing out of proportion. Every now and then when I try to pay in cash, it's impossible. Even if I give the guy 20 zloty, which is like nothing, he should have the change. No, it's like, oh, sorry, sir, you're gonna have to pay the exact amount, or I'm not gonna accept it.
And do you feel guilty when you hand up?
I feel, but I'm not gonna ditch my cash. It's like,
yeah, I agree.
I'm not ditching cash.
And this is the thing. There are certain like procedures with interactions in Poland which are a bit odd, and they make you feel guilty about like, for example, not knowing the procedure with filling in a certain form, or not having the right change to buy something in a shop, or not being fully prepared when you're trying to do a kind of standard interaction in a post office. You are made to feel bad about that. And yeah, I've just grown used to that feeling of guilt. It just, like, I was in a shop the other day, and I was like, right, I've got a bunch of cash, I want to like spend it. And I was so pleased with myself that I could give almost the right change and I didn't piss someone off.
About your first impressions of Poland, at that point you didn't really have any command over the Polish language.
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't know. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, it sounds like a bit of a cop out or something, but what happens is, in those situations, you kind of surround yourself with people who you can communicate with, and I don't even know what I did now. Like when I was in shops and different things, and
you
nobody
just try to survive.
Yeah, you just get by. It's not so bad. And do you know what the funny thing is? It's become, ironically, it's become more difficult later since I know Polish better. No, I definitely don't speak more fluently. But I definitely don't speak fluently, but I do speak much better than I did in the past. but this is really down to maybe it's an age thing, that the types of things I have to discuss are more difficult. So if it's something to do with a contract or it's something legal, I'm just really out of my comfort zone. I just don't have the words for it, etc. Whereas, I rewind back to 12, 13 years ago, and I'd be in the shop trying to, over the deli counter asking for something. Didn't matter if she didn't know like what I was exactly asking for. It's that thing, and I pointed it and it'd be done.
Point and click.
Exactly. And so the thing is, today I can be in the shop, and when I'm at the deli counter, I ask with ease what I want. But that's I don't think about that twice now. But I'm confronted more by things to do with technical issues. I'm trying to explain to my landlady that some plumbing issue. It's no idea what the word is or how to express it.
Sure. So you got a hold of the Polish language to a certain degree of proficiency, but then it notched up the level of interaction, and you enter another level.
It is, and then it becomes pretty difficult. And I kind of now I've realized that it was only in the last couple of years that I realized that almost every sentence I say is in some way slightly incorrect. Even if it was understandable, there's some error in it.
I guess it's because of the declension.
Yeah, but for the most part, and
it's a horrible thing, isn't it?
It is, and now I get lessons, and I get pulled up on it, and it makes me much more conscious of it, but I try to just plow through and just if I go more, I'm trying to learn it as well in the correct way, but more also I take the view, if you understand me, then I'm going to keep plowing on.
Sure, and I guess Poles give you points for effort.
Yeah, you do get that. Now, though, I am at a stage that I used to appreciate the points, but now I'm a bit more like, no, I'd rather...
Self-critical.
Yeah, I feel like I should be a bit more refined in how I'm expressing myself, but, there it is. So, in answer to your question, it wasn't... I just didn't really care in the first year or two. I just got by and adapted by having certain friends and surrounding myself in certain situations, and just muddling through. And to an extent, I'm kind of muddling through, but on a different level today.
Did you naturally gravitate towards other English speakers?
Yeah. Of course.
What were your baby steps in Warsaw in terms of? I really want to ask you if you followed the usual route, just finding a group of English-speaking friends or a community of some sort that could help you out.
Yeah, the thing is, I think I sort of mentioned this before, whereby I don't know if the internet was as big a thing back then, or just I was a bit more ignorant to it. I think a combination of both, and because of that I had no concept of, I don't know, a social media group of people who congregated together and they met, or they had things where they met. No, I didn't meet anybody online. I was completely oblivious to that world, and all the friends that I had met were either somebody that I knew from somebody that a friend of a friend, or I went out to a party, to a concert or whatever, and I chatted to someone. That, the funny thing was, for example, I used to go to a lot of drum and bass events back in 2009, 10, 11, and there was one guy who was, apologies for using the this form, but yeah, he was about 6'3". I don't know what that is meters, but very, very tall guy. And I used to see him every single time I went to one of these events. He was there every time. And after about the fourth or fifth time, I'd see this guy. But
I get to befriend him.
I said, yeah, I've got to speak to you. Sorry, what's your name? You're at all these places. And yeah, I talked to that guy, and then yeah, just became friends with him. He was like, oh, I'll speak to this guy, and then it's someone else.
Right.
And then after a while, I used to go every year to the same festival with him, and then we'd always go out. And it was like that with a lot of other people. It was like whatever sort of cultural or sphere that I entered into, I'd see someone once or twice, and then I'm like, okay, you're a regular in this bar, or you're a regular for this music, whatever it was. Then yeah, I think, right, try and
singling out anchors of sort.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's amazing how much more online orientated that whole finding your people is today.
Right, less analog.
Very much so. And yeah, I really, even up to about sort of 5 years ago, was just sort of finding my people, as it were, people who have a similar mindset or interest, just like overhearing people in a bar or something like that, and like, oh, hello, and being like, what are you all about? And
sure, nowadays you don't really approach people in that way. Everyone minds their own business with their nose stuck in their smartphone or what have you.
yeah, and I'm probably a bit more similar today, but like I said, it was only about 4 years ago that I got a smartphone. So because of that, it made me, I wasn't even aware of it, but I was just, yeah, more orientated to meeting people physically, thinking like, yeah, this is just how it's done. Even though I was aware that, you know, of course there's an online culture, but I thought, okay, these are not going to be like real friends for me. Whereas now I have adopted that a bit more, and I have met people online and then become friends with them in reality. So yeah, I respect that side a bit more.
How about teaching English in Poland?
Yeah, well, I did that for many years, and yeah, got great pleasure from it. And so my thing was more very much a kind of freelance way of teaching, and I would go to sort of certain schools, not kind of high street schools, but more sort of hidden language schools, and sort of approach them and ask if they needed somebody. And yeah, to be honest, it's a whole kind of industry which is served me very well over the years. A couple of years back, I stopped teaching. I kind of fell out of love with it, and yeah, I got very sort of tired with it, and I got into very much a routine. I was I'm bored of this.
It became a drudgery.
Yeah, very much. And I was really going through the motions, and I started doing other things, and yeah, I was bored of it. But about a year and a half or so ago, somebody offered me some lessons, and I said, yeah, go on then. And I did it. And actually then I was okay, actually I can see just sort of having a break for a year or two was what I needed. And yeah, now it doesn't dominate my work schedule. Yeah, I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it's a nice
I do it in a much less formal manner than I used to. Okay. So there's less structure to it, and yeah, it's just become a conversational thing. So,
Can you teach anyone solely relying on the conversation?
Yeah, well, I mean, that completely depends on their level. So on the whole, I don't think that somebody of a relatively low level is really seeking a native speaker, and if they were, I wouldn't sort of recommend that they would go with one. But I remember years ago, or not even years ago, I had many offers from mothers asking me to spend time with their very young children and talk with their young children. I'd always say no. But there was one occasion ages ago now, and there was a very, very insistent mother, and she said, "Oh, but my
I'll pay you double."
Yeah, whatever it was. She was very insistent, and it was going to work. And I can't remember how old this child was now, but it must have been very young, 4, something like that. Really young child, 5 maybe. And this mother basically just left me in a room with this 5-year-old. This 5-year-old just sort of shrunk in this seat. And I thought, very gently asked, so what's, asking the most simple questions I could. And this child was almost in tears. And it was like, this is why this doesn't work. And you are, it's this applies not only for a very young child, but for people of certain levels. You've got to have the foundation first, otherwise it's going to be all a bit much.
Sure.
So I've carried that through, and I kind of tend to see myself as more refining somebody's skills as opposed to sort of carving out the skills.
Is there any particular fracture of the English language, be it grammar or vocabulary, morphology, and so on and so forth, that Poles struggle with particularly?
Yeah, probably prepositions. That's the key, because when you speak, because it's vice versa. Like I'm constantly guessing. I'll just throw it out there I don't know. Of course, on a basic level I know, but kind of beyond the basics I'm still kind of guessing, because it seems to change in so many different circumstances, and you can see that amongst even pretty well-spoken Poles. It's just almost the last thing that you can really refine and get right. It's so different between the two languages.
Yeah, I think it's because even though a Polish person could speak very good English, their logics, the linguistical logics change at the last moment. They are the last to be adjusted. Because why it's in the picture? I mean, obviously it's in the picture. Something's in the picture, not on the picture, right?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Because for Poles it's na obrazku, on the picture. All right. So it's just a different way of seeing the world.
It is, and I think that came even more to the fore. Like in recent years, I started doing like kind of job interviews in English for people for a company. So I'm essentially testing their language skills, and then writing a report on it. And to have got to that stage already, you've got to be fairly decent. And so you kind of catch yourself writing the same thing again and again. Yeah, good at this, good at that. Oh, okay, that. Hasn't fully grasped prepositions, and it's that common thing, and then I as someone's speaking, I'm taking a note, I'm noting down where the error was, and it is that. So do you know what the I'm trying to remember which Scandinavian languages, or even Finnish, is Finland Scandinavia?
It is Scandinavia, although the language is not of the German linguistical family.
So I'm trying to remember. It might be Finnish, or it might be true Scandinavia, whereby they don't have prepositions in their language,
and they add suffixes to the words.
I
right?
assume so.
Or circumfixes, or anyhow.
But it's quite bizarre.
I think it's Finnish.
It is Finnish, right? And
absolutely horrid.
Yeah, right. And I was trying. I was listening to somebody who was. This was years ago now, so I don't remember it so clearly. But it was like a kind of discussing kind of sports commentary and how they did it in Finland, describing, you know, where something or where someone was in a place, you know, and how they moved their position and where they were, etc., and how bizarre it was when you were trying to sort of pull it all apart and then translate that, and it was kind of incomprehensible for all but the Finns.
Yeah, that takes a huge brain to interpret.
Yeah, so that really that kind of stuck with me because that was a big crossover between English and Polish, was just where, you know, the differences between the two and how we use different prepositions. But in actual fact, you know, then not understanding Finnish, but understanding that they didn't have prepositions, you suddenly thought about, well, you know, in actual fact, they're using the wrong preposition, but I understand exactly what the point is. So God knows what the point is in Finnish. They really lost me there.
I guess that's their most efficient weapon of all, their language.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Actually, I follow someone on YouTube, an Englishman on YouTube who has a channel, and he lives in Finland. And I don't know how I've not got to the bottom of this, but he never seems to sort of talk much about Finland or the language. So yeah, maybe that's why, but it's strange given the amount of material of his which I've listened to, watched, etc. So, yeah. There you go.
All right. Any projects up ahead, radio projects, or, I don't know, teaching projects, anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, my main aim is really to somehow get into computer games voiceovers, and that's my big aim. But like I said earlier, I'm not I'm not an actor at all, and I'm not good at expressing emotions or things like that. And that's something which I've now realised that I've got to kind of get better at if I'm going to really get into that scene, because I can see there's a lot of potential there. You know, Warsaw already has a thriving kind of computer games market, and there's a lot there. And
it's not just CD Projekt Red, or
exactly, right. And there's a lot going on. So try and go beyond the documentaries, etc., which I'm doing, and that's really what I want to do. But yeah, we'll see. It's a difficult area to enter, and I feel like I'm up against other actors, not other actors, but actual actors. So I've probably got a lot to learn, and there's a kind of steep learning curve behind that. So and with regard to radio, over the years, I've often thought about, and people have often said it to me, you should try on such and such a radio or some commercial station or whatever. But actually, I've had a lot of reflection on that. And one, I really love Kampus. Love it.
What for?
Because the whole ethos behind it is that they provide something, they allow you to do what you want. There's no restriction behind it. It's so,
and they don't dab their fingers in it.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned earlier about the Wild West of the internet. Of course, I'm not sort of completely careless with what I say or do. I'm very respectful of what I can and can't say, but I completely understand what I can say is so much broader there. What I can play because I play whatever music I really want to. Again, it's not restricted. I'm trusted, and I'm allowed to do what I want. What I want to say, again, trusted. Like, just, go ahead. And I just know it doesn't operate like that anywhere else. I've listened to all other stations, and although I don't 100% understand everything that is spoken in Polish on those stations, I know what the themes are. I know what is broadly spoken about, and it's in such a narrow corridor, and it's a bit drab. And I love the fact that I go in and I'm genuinely enthusiastic and driven to really, get off my chest whatever I've done or had that week, and what might have played on my mind, and what I'm interested in speaking about, having a discussion about, and pushing people's buttons maybe a little bit, and then like the chance to show people some new music. It's like I did every year I do a roundup of the year, and I play my favorite music from the year and discuss what was the best of that year. Now, during the pandemic, it's a bit, what my favorite cultural event or concert or
online cultural event.
It just becomes a bit obsolete. But so it became a lot more about music, etc. But that's when I get the most interaction. It's that kind of roundup of the year, and people, oh, what is that music? What is that tune? What's that? I never listened to that album. And suddenly, then a lot more people are writing to me and asking, and that's where the interaction comes about, because there's less interaction on a week-to-week basis. But it's those times where they hear the creme de la creme of the year, and they're like, oh, ears are pricked up, and people want to know about different things. So and it's that sort of thing of introducing those new things to people. And I stumble across a lot of things. Sometimes I'm a sort of person, I search for things maybe and listen to it online, and sometimes let the algorithm take over and then keep listening and have it on the background. There might be something there, and wherever I go, use Shazam, and so there is a lot of things popping up all over the place, and it's really nice to share that with people, and then to have people sort of come, oh, that's weird and wonderful, and in that way. And I just think I don't get that elsewhere. So more than anything, I don't want to sort of do something other than Kampus. I think it's really just it's on a steady rise as well. If we're just talking about the numbers of listeners, etc., it really is on the up and up for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And although you don't have the reach of the major commercial stations, it's just doesn't matter. Like I just thought to myself, what would I be discussing if I went on whatever those big commercial stations? I wouldn't be playing my music.
Right.
And what would I be discussing? I get the feeling someone's going to be giving me a call telling me such and such is not suitable for our station, and we have to be sensitive to our sponsors.
Right, you might risk becoming a mouth for somebody else's voice.
Exactly. And I just, when I think to myself, what is it that I get pleasure from? It is just arriving, talking about what I like.
It has been great having you here, Jon, talking with us and sharing the positive energy of a true radio man at the last bulwark of free non-stream radio that Kampus Radio is, 97.1 FM. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Anything you would like to tell to any of our listeners and viewers?
Well, if what I've said, if it sounds of any interest to you, then yeah, please go ahead and tune in every Saturday from 2 till 4 on Saturday afternoon on Radio Campus www.radiocampus.fm as it is now. Or 97.1 if you're living in Warsaw. So and it's a kind of me and the Mexican and the American former doctor. We just ramble away about all sorts of things and whatever's kind of playing on my mind. So it's. I think it's something which is not really on offer on most radio stations. It's a little bit, it's not for everybody, but I think it tickles some people's fancies. They like a little bit of off the wall, and they like a little bit of something which is they don't really know what to expect. I have some topics in mind, but I'm still going to make it up as I go along, and that's really part of it. I had a rant about theories behind why most people are right-handed last week. And it went on for about 20 minutes before we played another song. And if that tickles your fancy, then tune in.
You heard the man. This was Jon Carter and his human story. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you, Maciej. Absolute pleasure.